In a cold, indifferent city, a 16-year-old homeless black boy survived day by day on leftovers from trash bins. One rainy night he discovered a blind 7-year-old girl, lost and trembling in a dark alley. Though they were strangers, he brought her to his makeshift shelter and gave her the only clean food he had. Then he carried her on his back for 10 miles through the freezing rain to get her home. No one knew she was the daughter of a billionaire, and from that moment on, his life would change forever. Downtown was alive, but not in a way that made you feel welcome. Neon lights blinked over greasy storefronts, steam rose from manhole covers, mixing with the distant sound of police sirens and muffled hip-hop leaking from passing cars. The sidewalks were crowded. Suits rushing out of office buildings, tourists taking selfies near food trucks, delivery bikes weaving in and out like they owned the lane. No one looked down, no one looked back, and no one ever noticed the boy moving along the edges. Malik moved like someone who knew how to be invisible. 16, skinny, black, dressed in layers of mismatched clothes he'd found or traded for. His hoodie was 2 sizes too big, sleeves frayed, and the sneakers on his feet had long since given up their soles. He had a small backpack slung over one shoulder, filled with everything he owned. A crumpled photo of his mom from years ago, a cracked plastic water bottle, and a few paper napkins folded neatly like they mattered. To him they did. It was just after 6, but the sun had already dipped behind the high rises. People rushed home, clutching phones, coffee cups, grocery bags. Malik watched them like a ghost through the glass of a convenience store window, wondering what it felt like to have somewhere to be. He turned into the alley behind the Vietnamese bakery on Jefferson. He came here most evenings. The owner tossed out unsold bread at the end of the day, still edible if you knew what to look for. Malik crouched behind the dumpster, using his sleeve to push open the lid, careful not to draw attention from the back door security camera. Inside, beneath some torn plastic wrap and old lettuce, he found it, a small loaf of white bread, still wrapped, only a little damp on one side. He gave it a quick check, sniffed it, then smiled faintly. It would do. That's when he heard it. A soft hiccuping sound, like a stifled cry. He paused, turning his head. Behind a stack of flattened cardboard boxes near the back fence, someone was there. Malik stood slowly, instinct sharp, ready to run if he had to. But what he saw stopped him cold. A little girl. She was curled up on the concrete, knees pulled to her chest, head resting against the bricks. Her dress was once pink, now brown with dirt and soot. Her skin was covered in scratches, bruises old and new. Her hair was thick and curly but matted in clumps, and her eyes, they didn't move. They stared straight ahead, empty and glassy. She didn't even flinch when he stepped closer. "Hey," he said, his voice low, careful. "Nothing." He walked closer, crouched to her level. "You okay?" The girl stirred, barely. Her head turned toward his voice, but her eyes remained blank. "I'm not supposed to talk to strangers," she said. Her voice was small, hoarse. Malik felt something tighten in his chest. He lowered himself to the ground, bread still in his hand. "Fair," he replied. "I'm Malik. No, I'm not a stranger." She didn't respond. Her fingers were curled tightly around the edge of a box, knuckles white. He looked at her legs, bare feet scraped and swollen. Whatever happened, it wasn't recent. She'd been here a while. "You hungry?" he asked. She hesitated, then gave the faintest nod. Malik opened his backpack. Inside was a small brown paper bag. He'd gotten it earlier from a volunteer at a church. A wrapped turkey sandwich, still warm when it was handed to him. He had been saving it. But now, he reached inside, took it out and carefully unwrapped it. Then he crawled a little closer, held it out for her. She sniffed it, reached out, hands shaky, and took it. The way she bit into it broke something in him. She didn't chew fast. She didn't gulp. She just held the food in her mouth like she didn't believe it was real. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ava." "That's a nice name." A pause. "You live around here?" She shook her head. "I don't know where I am." Malik nodded slowly. He sat back, leaned against the cold wall of the alley, and finally took a bite of the bread from the dumpster. It was stale. Didn't matter. For a long time, neither of them said anything. The city hummed around them. Somewhere a siren blared. A man yelled into a phone as he passed by the mouth of the alley. The world kept spinning, fast and full of people who didn't care. But in that alley, a boy who had nothing gave the only decent meal he had to a blind girl who had even less. When Ava began to shiver, Malik stood. "My place isn't far," he said. "Not much, but it's dry." She didn't move. "You don't have to come," he added. "I'll stay here with you if you want." She turned her head slightly toward him, then nodded. He helped her stand, gently guided her small hand into his. They walked together through the side streets, ducking past construction fences and graffiti-covered dumpsters. Cars passed by. No one looked. No one slowed. Behind a gas station, through a chain-link fence, was Malik's home. A lean-to made of plywood and tarps tucked against a brick wall. There was a blanket inside and a milk crate he used as a seat. A small battery lantern sat on a hook. He turned it on. "Watch your step," he said softly. He helped Ava sit down, wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, and sat beside her. Outside, the city was loud and bright, but in this small corner of forgotten pavement, the night slowed down. And for the first time in months, Malik felt like he wasn't surviving alone. The rain came just after midnight, soft at first, barely a mist, then slowly building into a steady rhythm against the patchwork roof of Malik's shelter. Thin sheets of plastic and tarps, duct-taped together over time, fluttered in the breeze. Wind crept through the gaps, water dripped from the corners. But inside it was dry enough, warm enough. Barely. Malik sat with his knees pulled close, back against the cinder-block wall, watching the glow of his lantern flicker across Ava's sleeping face. She had curled up beside the crate without a word, worn out from food and fear. He'd offered her the blanket and helped her lie down, folding another old hoodie beneath her head like a pillow. Now she was breathing slow, steady, one hand still clinging to the corner of the fabric as if it might disappear if she let go. Her eyelids fluttered sometimes, and he wondered what kind of dreams a kid like her had to carry. He hoped they were better than the day she'd just lived. Malik rubbed his hands together for warmth, then slid off his hoodie and placed it over the blanket where it barely reached her feet. His own arms bristled in the cold, but he didn't care. She was small, fragile. She hadn't said much since they arrived, and Malik hadn't pushed. He knew what silence meant. He lived in it. He didn't need to ask to understand. The shelter creaked slightly as the wind shifted. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. Farther out, tires splashed through puddles. Life went on outside this alley like it always had, fast, loud, and uncaring. But in here the world felt slower, quieter. Malik leaned his head back and closed his eyes. His body ached. Not from carrying her, she was light, but from everything else. From years of walking with nowhere to arrive, from nights on concrete, mornings with no breakfast, afternoons dodging cops who didn't like the look of him. But tonight, something was different. He didn't know what to call it. It wasn't comfort exactly, but it felt better. Maybe because someone else was breathing in the same space. Maybe because for once he wasn't just surviving for himself. A soft voice broke the silence. "Are you still there?" He opened his eyes. Ava was lying still, facing the wall, voice barely louder than the rain. "Yeah," he said. "I'm here. I thought maybe you'd go." Malik shook his head, even though she couldn't see it. "Not leaving you out here." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Do you have a mom?" He hesitated. His voice came out quieter than before. "I used to." A pause. "Me too," Ava whispered. Something about the way she said it made Malik feel like the walls around his chest were tightening. He wanted to ask, "Where is she now?" But he didn't. It wasn't the time. Ava wasn't ready, and neither was he. "You want me to tell you a story?" he asked instead, not sure where the question came from. She nodded gently against the makeshift pillow. Malik thought for a second. "Okay," he said, letting out a slow breath. Once there was a girl who could see everything, not with her eyes but with her ears. She could hear the way leaves moved when the wind was happy. She could hear the difference between a dog wagging its tail and one that was scared. She heard the world in colors, and she knew which sounds were safe and which ones weren't. Ava turned toward him slightly, her hand still gripping the blanket. What happened to her? Malik smiled, soft and tired. She got lost one day, real far from home, but someone found her. Someone who'd been invisible for a long time. He didn't have a map or a car or even clean shoes, but he had ears too, and he promised to stay until she wasn't lost anymore. There was a pause. The kind of silence that isn't heavy or awkward, but full. Ava whispered, "That's a good story. I'm still figuring out the ending," Malik said. She didn't answer. Her breathing evened out again. She was asleep. Malik leaned back once more, pulling his knees close. His stomach was still a little hollow, but it didn't bother him, not tonight. He looked down at her, at the bruise above her eyebrow, at the faint scratch on her cheek, and wondered how long she'd been out there. Wondered how no one had seen her. Or maybe they had, and kept walking. He thought about the sandwich, about the way she ate it like it was the first food that hadn't hurt. That wasn't what got to him, though. What got to him was how she'd never even asked. Never expected kindness. Just like him. Rain tapped against the tarp. Malik sat in silence, blinking slowly. He couldn't sleep. Not yet, not while she was still this small thing under his roof, still trusting him with her whole self. That kind of trust didn't come easy. It wasn't something he'd ever had the luxury to give or receive. His eyes wandered toward the lantern. It was dimming. The battery wouldn't last much longer. He reached over and clicked it off. Darkness wrapped around them. But it wasn't the kind that scared him, not tonight. He listened. To the rain, to the street sounds beyond the alley, to Ava's breathing, to the part of him that felt different now, like he mattered. He didn't know what the next day would bring, but he knew this. Someone in the world had trusted him, with their hunger, with their fear, with their name. And he wouldn't let that go. The morning came gray and damp, the air heavy with the smell of wet concrete and rust. Malik woke before Ava, stretching his aching legs and rolling his neck to ease the stiffness from sleeping against the cold wall. He glanced over at her. She was still asleep, small body curled under the blanket, her face soft in the pale morning light leaking through the tarp. He didn't want to wake her, but he knew they couldn't stay here much longer. The alley was usually quiet, but it wouldn't be for long. By mid-morning, the corner mechanic shop would fire up their engines, and someone might notice the girl, and if they did, questions would follow, questions Malik wasn't ready to answer, not yet. He took a deep breath and gently tapped her shoulder. "Ava?" he said softly. "Hey, it's morning." She stirred, eyes fluttering open though they didn't focus on anything. "Are we still here?" she whispered. "Yeah. But I think we should go out for a bit, maybe find something to eat." She nodded slowly, rubbing her arms under the blanket. "Oh." Malik helped her sit up, then handed her the hoodie he'd given her the night before. It was still a little damp around the sleeves, but she pulled it on without complaint. They stepped out into the alley together, Malik holding her hand, guiding her carefully over the uneven ground and broken glass. She winced once when her bare foot caught a sharp edge, and Malik quickly crouched down, brushing it off and offering, "You want me to carry you?" She hesitated. "Will it hurt your back?" He shook his head. "I'm good, just hop on." She climbed onto his back, arms wrapping tightly around his neck, and Malik stood up, steadying her weight. She was light. Too light, really. They made their way down the block, avoiding the main street where uniforms were more likely to patrol. Instead, Malik ducked through alleyways and empty lots, sticking close to the walls. He knew the layout of this part of the city like a second skin, where the cameras were, which businesses were kind, which ones called the cops for just existing. Eventually he reached a small strip of shops near the edge of the old district. There was a corner store where the clerk usually ignored him, and a barber shop that played loud gospel music through open doors. but it was the phone repair shop next to the pawn shop that caught his attention today. The door was open. A middle-aged man sat behind the counter, scrolling on a cracked iPad, earbuds in. A small group of teens hovered near the front, pointing and laughing at something on the shop's dusty flat screen. Malik approached carefully, Ava still on his back. One of the boys looked up. "Yo, who's that on your back?" he asked, more curious than mean. "A friend," Malik said simply. "We're just looking for something." The screen behind them was showing the news local segment, nothing fancy, but then the image changed. Malik blinked. A photo appeared. A little girl, dirty pink dress, braided hair. Ava. He froze. The anchor's voice played over the screen, muffled under the barbershop's choir music, missing since Tuesday. Authorities say she may have wandered away from her caretaker in the city's West End park. Anyone with information is urged to call. Malik stepped closer, eyes locked on the screen. The photo was definitely Eva. Cleaner, smiling, but the same face, same hair. "Wait," one of the teens said, turning to the screen. "Is that... Yo, that's her, right?" The shopkeeper looked up now, pulling out an earbud. "That your sister?" he asked, brow furrowed. Malik didn't answer. He could feel Ava's breath quicken against the back of his neck. She was clinging tighter now. He stepped back, nodding. "Yeah," he said quickly. "That's her." "Damn, they've been looking all over," the teen added. "There's like a reward or something?" Malik didn't wait to hear more. He backed out of the shop, turned down the side street, and kept walking fast. He didn't stop until they reached a quiet alley behind a closed laundromat. Only then did he crouch and let Ava down gently. She looked up at him. "Was that me?" "Yeah," he said softly. "They're looking for you." Her face scrunched. "I don't want to go with the police." "You won't," he said. "We're going to find your real home. Your family, okay?" Ava nodded, though her lips trembled. Malik sat beside her, heart racing. He hadn't expected to find a lead that fast, and he hadn't expected it to hit this hard. The news said she had wandered off from a park on the west side. That was at least 10 miles from here. How had she made it that far, blind, alone, scared? And why hadn't anyone found her sooner? He looked at her again, sitting on the curb in his hoodie, feet bare, hair tangled. She deserved better. And now he had a direction. But the address, he didn't catch it. Just West End Park and a news station logo. He glanced down the street. There were a few people still around. He needed a phone, somewhere with a charger, a map, a lead, and a way to get there. "Come on," he said, standing and offering his hand. "We're going to figure this out." She reached up, trusting, and took it. As they started walking again, Malik felt something different in his chest. It wasn't just about finding her home now. It was about proving something, to the world maybe, or to himself, that even a kid like him with no home, no money, no last name anyone remembered, could do something right, something real. He didn't know exactly how they'd get there yet, but he knew where they needed to go, and he wasn't letting go of her hand. The clouds rolled in before they even made it out of the old district. Malik had been tracking them since the first wind picked up, the way the air shifted and grew heavier. He knew rain when it was coming, not just because of the sky, but because of the way people moved. Faster, eyes on the clouds, umbrellas opening in nervous hands. By the time they crossed under the freeway overpass and left the crumbling warehouse blocks behind, the drizzle had begun, cold, steady, soaking through fabric like it belonged there. Malik adjusted Ava's weight on his back. She was quiet, arms wrapped loosely around his shoulders, cheek resting just above his collar. He could feel her shivering slightly and tried to pull the thin tarp tighter around her. It wasn't a real poncho, just a torn piece of plastic he'd found earlier near a dumpster, but it was all he had, and he had draped it over her like a small cocoon. He didn't care that it left his own hoodie soaked, that his jeans clung to his legs with every step. Her breathing came in short, tired puffs now, and he didn't want her to feel the rain. The address. He had pieced it together after stopping at a laundromat with a payphone booth outside. A kind woman inside had let him look at a paper map tacked to the wall behind the soap machine. He hadn't asked too many questions, just found the cross streets from the news report and locked them in his memory. It was west of here. Maybe 10 miles, maybe more. There were buses, sure, but no driver would let him on looking like this, not carrying a kid who wasn't his, not barefoot, not without money. So he walked. The sidewalks turned to puddles, and puddles turned to streams. His feet squelched inside his shoes. The right one had ripped wide open at the toe, and the sock underneath was turning a darker gray with each step. But he kept going, 1 block at a time, past strip malls and shuttered storefronts, past a school with broken windows and a playground empty except for one swing moving in the wind. People stared. Not many said anything. One man in a raincoat did glance over and mutter, "Where's her mother?" But Malik didn't stop. He kept his head down, water dripping off his hair, jaw tight. Ava didn't say much either. A few times she mumbled something in her sleep, names maybe, or bits of dreams, but mostly she was quiet, her weight growing heavier as her body slumped against his back. At a gas station 2 miles in, he stopped under the awning to catch his breath. His shoulders were aching and his fingers were numb from gripping the plastic sheet around her. He leaned against the ice machine and slid down into a crouch. Ava stirred. "Are we there yet?" she asked, voice raw and small. "Not yet," Malik said. "Soon." She didn't complain, just nodded and rested her head again. He stood up after a minute and started walking once more. The rain kept coming. It wasn't heavy, just enough to make everything harder, to chill his bones, to fog up his glasses if he had any, to soak through whatever hope he had left in his backpack. But he didn't stop. Not when his legs burned, not when he stepped into a pothole deeper than he expected and nearly fell. Not even when the street signs started to blur together in his memory and he had to guess which way was west. Around the 6th mile, the cold had settled deep into his back and he started coughing. He ignored it, focused on the road, on Ava's breathing, on the image of the house from the news video, a tall gate, a red brick wall, lights glowing through rain-slicked windows. Somewhere out there, someone had been looking for this little girl. Someone cared. And he would get her there, even if it meant crawling the last block. By the 8th mile, the sky darkened again. He passed under a canopy of oak trees lining a residential street and realized he was finally out of the industrial zones. The sidewalks were wider here, the lawns trimmed, no broken bottles, no police tape fluttering on fences. A world away from where they started. Ava was completely silent now. Malik reached up and tapped her knee. "You okay back there?" Her voice came back weak. "Tired. Almost there," he whispered. He passed a man walking a golden retriever who gave him a strange look but said nothing. The dog sniffed curiously at Malik's legs as they walked by, tail wagging. Malik kept his eyes forward, praying silently that no one would call anyone. He wasn't trying to hurt anybody, he was just trying to finish what he started. The last stretch felt like the longest. Every step up the hill toward the cross street felt heavier, like gravity itself had turned against him. His fingers were white and shaking, lips cold. His breath came in short bursts. But when he turned the corner and saw the gates, he knew. There it was, just like in the video. A large iron gate stood between 2 tall brick pillars, a driveway curling inward behind it. Beyond that, a 3-story home with wide windows and soft yellow light glowing from the inside. The rain fell harder now, as if trying to wash the moment away. Malik stepped up to the call box and pressed the button. Nothing. He pressed again, harder. He looked around. The street was quiet, empty of cars. A few trees lined the sidewalk, leaves dripping. Then, finally, a voice crackled through the speaker. "Yes?" Malik leaned in. I found her. Ava. I found Ava." A pause. Then the speaker clicked off. 30 seconds passed. Then the gate creaked and slowly opened inward. Malik stepped forward hesitantly. He crossed the driveway, Ava still on his back, barely moving. The front door opened before he reached the steps. A tall man in a dark gray suit came out, followed by a woman in a housecoat, with tears already running down her face. Behind them stood a man in white gloves, clearly the house's staff, staring wide-eyed. Malik carefully dropped to one knee and let Ava down onto the dry marble of the porch. She stood wobbling for a moment, then tilted her head toward the voices. "Daddy?" The man rushed forward and dropped to his knees, arms wrapping tightly around her. "Baby," he choked out. "My baby." Malik stepped back, water running off him, hoodie clinging to his skin, heart pounding. The woman sobbed. The staff member ushered them all inside. The front door began to close. Malik raised a hand halfway. "She's safe now." And just like that, before anyone could ask his name, before anyone could stop him, he turned around and started walking back into the rain. Malik didn't look back as the rain swallowed him again. The driveway behind him, the tall iron gates, the soft yellow lights, they all faded into the sound of water pattering on pavement and the squish of his soaked sneakers with each step. His legs trembled, his arms hung heavy, and his body screamed for rest, but something inside him felt light, not because he was dry or fed, he was neither, but because he'd done it. She was safe now. That mattered, that was enough. At least, that's what he told himself. He found shelter beneath a bus stop awning 5 blocks away, where the cold wind still reached in, but the roof kept most of the rain off his head. There was no bench, just damp concrete, so he sat against the plexiglass wall and pulled his knees to his chest. The plastic tarp he'd wrapped around Ava was gone. His hoodie clung to him like a second skin, wet and heavy. He coughed into his elbow, throat dry and raw. He figured he'd rest a bit, then head back downtown. There was a church near the overpass that sometimes left bags of food by the back door if you came early. Maybe he could get a clean shirt, too. He didn't think about the mansion, or the man with the deep voice who had knelt in the rain, calling his daughter's name like she was the only thing in the world. That part of the story was over. Malik was used to walking away before anyone asked questions. What he didn't know was that the questions had already started. Inside the house, chaos had given way to a strange, trembling quiet. Ava had been wrapped in blankets, her temperature checked, her bruises documented. The woman Malik had seen, her name was Julia, sat at her daughter's side, brushing her curls with fingers that shook. She kept whispering "thank you" over and over, though Ava didn't quite understand who it was meant for. The man in the suit, Nathan Carlyle, paced the wide hallway outside the bedroom, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, tight. "No, we don't know his name. He left before we could stop him." He paused, listening. "Yes, black teen, 16, maybe 17, thin, wore a hoodie, came through the storm with her on his back." He ended the call and turned to his assistant Paul, the same man who had answered the gate. "How the hell did she end up 10 miles away?" Nathan asked, voice sharp. Paul looked down. "Sir?" "The day she disappeared, I took her to the park near West End. She likes the swings there. I turned my back for a minute to take a call." "A minute?" Nathan stepped closer, anger barely restrained. "She's blind, Paul. A minute is a lifetime." "I know," Paul said, eyes wet now. "I didn't mean to—" Nathan didn't yell. He didn't have to. The weight of what could have happened hung in the hallway like smoke. After a long pause, he sighed and rubbed his temple. "Get the security footage from the front gate," he said. "Find out where he went." Within hours, the video clip had made its way onto social media. No names, no face close-ups, just a blurry, rain-covered image of a teenage boy, thin and dripping wet, stepping back from the porch as a little girl reached out and whispered, "Daddy." The caption read, "Unknown teen walks 10 miles in the rain to return blind girl to her family, then disappears." Someone reposted it. Then a local news outlet picked it up. By morning it had been shared nearly 50,000 times. But Malik didn't know any of that. He had made it back downtown just before sunrise, crashing behind the same convenience store that sometimes tossed out expired crackers and bottled water. He was asleep, curled in a ball under a cardboard mat, when the voice woke him. It wasn't a voice he recognized. It was firm, steady, but not angry. Maley blinked up at the gray sky. The man standing above him was tall, wearing a dark coat and a dry expression. He wasn't a cop. Not dressed like that. Malik sat up slowly, pulling the hoodie tighter around his shoulders. "I'm not stealing nothing," he mumbled. "I know," the man said. Malik's heart skipped. It was the man from the house. Nathan Carlyle took a step closer, then crouched to eye level. He didn't rush. His tone didn't change. "You walked 10 miles in the rain to bring my daughter home? She told me everything she could, her name, your voice, the sandwich you gave her." He paused. "I don't think we ever said thank you." Malik looked down at the wet concrete, unsure what to do with his hands. "I wasn't looking for thanks," he muttered. "I know that too," Nathan said. He reached into his coat and pulled out a thermos. "Hot tea. Thought you might need it." Malik took it slowly, fingers trembling. He brought it to his lips and flinched at the heat, but it was the kind of pain that meant something was waking up inside him again. Nathan sat down beside him, just sat. For a moment there was no talking, just the sound of early traffic and birds shaking off the rain. Then Nathan spoke again. "Ava's been through a lot. She's going to need time. But she's okay now because of you." Malik nodded once. "I was just trying to help." "I know," Nathan said. "And now I want to help you." Malik turned slightly, unsure. "Why?" "Because someone like you, someone who'd carry a stranger's kid across the city in the rain and give her the only good food he had, doesn't belong on a sidewalk behind a store. You belong somewhere people see you, respect you." Malik didn't answer. He looked away, blinking fast. Nathan stood up and extended a hand. "Come with me. You're not going back to this." Malik stared at the hand for a long time, then slowly he reached up and took it. Weeks later, the city had moved on, as it always did. The video faded from headlines. But inside a warm house on the west side, a girl named Ava sat at the breakfast table with a wide smile, reaching for the orange juice she always spilt but never stopped trying to pour, and across from her, in a clean sweatshirt, new shoes on his feet and a school bag leaning against his chair, Malik smiled back. Her brother now, by something deeper than blood. And for the first time in his life someone had looked at him and said, "You belong here." This time he believed it. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.